Okay, so I guess I'm sort of leading this conversation. So Jessica, nice to meet you.
Yep.
This is the first of three conversations we have scheduled with customers. So I hope I get like progressively better, at
I'm sure
it.
it'll be great.
All right, so why don't we just start? You can tell me a little bit about yourself. I'll tell you a little bit about myself.
Sounds great. I'm Jessica Catton Rinaldi. I'm general counsel at Enwave Energy. It's a thermal energy company that's a North American thermal energy company with operations across Canada, mostly focused on district energy. So what we do is we ensure that companies can get thermal energy heating and cooling from a centralized source so that they can avoid having to have their own boilers and chillers on their site. And I've been with Enwave for about 4 years, just over 4 years. And before that was in private practice for my whole career.
And so like centralized boilers and chillers, so that must be in urban centers, like providing heating and cooling to large office towers?
Mostly, yeah, it's mostly office towers, but we do some residential as well. Lots of critical customers, so hospitals, data centers, entertainment spaces, commercial towers. So lots of different types of building profiles that can sit on a district energy system.
So how did Enwave get started?
Enwave's been around for quite a while, actually. It started back in the 1960s as a steam operator for the hospitals in Toronto. So it was an aggregated district steam system to support the hospitals and the hospital network that we have here downtown. And it really grew from there. And it was around the early 2000s that it really started to expand into what it is today, where we started to put in place what's our deep lake water cooling system. So that's where we basically take chilled water from Lake Ontario and we work with the city of Toronto. So the city is pulling in that chilled water already to go to all of our taps downtown Toronto. We take some of that cool energy off of that water that's coming in and we use that to distribute it downtown to multiple buildings to cool and chill the buildings that are downtown.
Does Enwave operate outside of Toronto or like in other cities?
Yep. We also have operations in Charlottetown. We have operations in Windsor, Ontario, London. We have a residential system in Markham, and we're working on some greenfield developments in Mississauga, as well as another one in Toronto at the Etobicoke Civic Center.
Very good. So are all the assets and the operations in Canada, or is there an international presence as well?
Currently all in Canada.
Is there any view to expand internationally the business?
I mean, I think we're always looking at opportunities that make sense. Scaling district energy is an important part of our business. The technology behind district energy has been around for hundreds of years. So it's really about taking commercial scalability of what we do. And that's the benefit of district energy, right? Is the bigger it gets, the more that people can benefit from having a district. So we're always looking for those opportunities.
And when you were in private practice, were you working on this type of, thermal infrastructure, we'll call it? Or was this sort of a new domain that you moved into?
I wasn't working on it at all. I was working a little bit in the energy space, but I was actually mostly a securities and M&A transaction lawyer, focused on governance as well. So doing a lot of deal work. Some of that was in the energy space, but did a lot of other industry work as well. So really spread across different sectors. So things like mining, things like cannabis regulation up in Canada, healthcare, energy, really any type of transactions that were going on.
And is growth all organically, or is there any M&A inorganic growth that happens in the business?
Yeah, both happen in the sector. So there is some M&A activity that happens. And then there's also some organic growth where we build out our own pipelines in our own districts and build new systems.
Like I imagine from a corporate finance perspective, does the business, does it look similar to a energy utility company in the sense that it's like securitizing revenue streams to bring that cash forward to grow the business? Is that sort of roughly how that works?
Yeah, it's a little bit different than a traditional utility. So we do operate in a lot of senses like a traditional utility because we are providing heating and cooling to various customers. But we also have a bit of uniqueness in the way that we operate because of the environment that we're in. And so we really are trying to be an energy partner to our customers as much as possible. So we look at what is it that they're trying to accomplish in their buildings and how can we make that economical for them, but also potentially help with some of their ESG savings. That's a big part of what we can do as well by aggregating some of that energy. So So it's a slightly different value proposition and a slightly different partnership than you would have with a traditional utility.
Great. And so maybe we could sort of transition the conversation a little bit more to your role and like what your day-to-day or week-to-week looks like as a general counsel of an energy partner, as you described it, right? Like what's sort of the, what does the pie look like, in terms of, where your time is spent?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky question, always asking a lawyer what their day-to-day looks like, because day-to-day is always very different, which is part of why I like what I do. So a chunk of what I work on would be on the commercial side. So helping support the commercial operations, make sure that we're getting those contracts with our customers that we're looking to get and supporting that growth and revenue side. The other big chunk is operations. So we now have customers who are connected. So we need to support them as well. And so our operations have questions. We have supply chain that we need to help support to ensure that we're getting all the things that we need. We have big manufactured equipment that we bring in as well. So ensuring that we have the right contracts, the right support, right relationships with those manufacturers, and how are we helping support that part of the business. And then there's a lot of other stuff as well that sort of comes up day to day, but I'd say those are the main buckets of things.
How, we're living in very, turbulent times right now in terms of the macro. Like how is the, it's sort of like an interesting contrast between like how volatile the macro is and how I guess long-term your business would have to be. I imagine sort of the durations on your business are very long, in terms of, the supply contracts, the finance, how you think about financing, probably decades. How is such a volatile macro independent impacting such a long-term business like you're in?
Yeah, you're right. It is long-term business. You need a lot of foresight in what we're doing. And we definitely live in an environment where the only constant is change. The unique thing of any kind of project or industry where it's capital intensive is you need very patient capital and you need good governance to make sure that you're thinking about risk properly. You're going to have risk on timelines. You're going to have risk on budget. And that's not just legal risk. That's project management risk more broadly. You need strong project managers, right? To be making sure that they're looking at your projects and staying on top of those kinds of risks, because you're working on things years before there's shells in the ground. And we all know that in those years that you've contracted something before you get the shovel in the ground or while the shovel is in the ground, things are going to change. And so for us, it's really about trying to have a strong team and strong governance that we can think through, okay, what could these risks be? There's a lot of knowns that we do know, and we know about that uncertainty. So knowing some of that uncertainty, how can we try to manage that now so that we can put ourselves in the best position throughout the duration of the project to manage some of these risks, and also manage the fact that there's a lot of stakeholders at the table as well. So they have interests as well. And we do view ourselves as a partner in ensuring that we can maintain that partnership and all come to the table together to work on these big projects that have a lot of benefit for all of these stakeholders.
So when you talk about governance, unpack governance, what does that mean in your business? Is it controls? Is it reporting? How do you think about governance in your business?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of controls, reporting, processes. So it's making sure that you're really taking some of the institutional knowledge and institutionalizing it. You never want to have that one point of failure where one person understands a process or how something works. You really need to make sure that you have a process that everyone can see, everyone understands, and it happens systematically throughout your organization, the way you're thinking about some of these risks. And then you have controls in place as well. So you're identifying what those might be, and you're working through risk registers, you're working through making sure that you have the right documentation, right people at the table, right voices. So all of those views can be represented and decisions aren't being made in silos.
When you're in a board meeting or an executive committee meeting, and it sounds like you're, across a, fairly complex operation with a lot of detail, what's the expectation on you that you have, from your counterparts, from your, colleagues at the board level, at the executive committee level? What's the expectation on you that, that you can, access that knowledge that sits in your department quickly?
Can I ask you just to clarify what you mean by that? Like, were you saying to access the knowledge around risk or to access the knowledge around governance or just anything, understanding what?
Everything. Like, I think that there's, I was talking to another one of our customers. It's a general counsel at a very large construction company, engineering and construction company. And, he said that, one of the expectations in the boardroom is that, there's a conversation around some project that has a JV structure to it. And there's sort of an expectation that he has, all the details of the exact status of that JV project immediately on hand to be able to support a discussion, instantly. I'm just curious, information is so readily available to us now, especially with AI and everything. It just feels so, like the liquidity of information is so high now. But, as legal and governance professionals, there's so much of it, and the detail of it is very granular, and the accuracy of it is very important. I'm just curious how you think about shifting expectations in terms of how quickly you can get access to really accurate information, and how that sort of impacts your relationship at the board level and at the executive committee level.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I think one of the things we try to do to help get ahead of that is we categorize our projects into different buckets so that the board understands really what they should care about from a risk perspective. So what are our major projects? And for the major projects, we do make sure that we are fully prepared to talk about even some of the nuance on what's going on in major projects, or bringing the right people in the room are available if they need to be. So that's a way that we try to get ahead of it, knowing that there is an expectation that some of that information is at your fingertips. If this is something the business needs to be focused on, then we need to understand what's going on and be able to answer those questions. I think there's a lot of tools out there as well. So, I may be digressing a little bit, not necessarily at the board conversation, but there's a lot of tools out there that are starting to show a lot of value in terms of how you can access information that you didn't necessarily have access to at your fingertips. I'm seeing a lot more use cases for some Gen AI on the legal team and the things that we're doing. So that's not necessarily going to answer my board question right in the moment, but it's going to help me get access to information that I might need to prepare for something, or to, again, create some of that institutional knowledge. So it's not just sitting in my head, but can be shared across the team.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So if you were to start, you brought up Gen AI and legal. If you were to, wave a magic wand, and have a legal Gen AI product to solve a problem, what problem would that be?
It's a great question. I'm going to answer it differently. I don't want Gen AI to solve problems. I want Gen AI to enable really smart lawyers to bring more value to the table. So I think lawyers are uniquely positioned in an organization to see a lot of things cross-functionally that other people don't see, because we're involved in so many things. And so I think we already come to the table with an interesting perspective of what's happening around risk across the business and opportunities around the business that other people might not. Some people certainly see, but a lot of people don't get to see as cross-functionally as the legal team. And so I think Gen AI can really help unlock some of the value that we can be bringing to the table by institutionalizing some of the knowledge that we have and allowing us to really be thought partners in the way that I think a legal team really can be.
Got it. So does that look like surfacing insights across commercial information, employment information, corporate finance, governance information, and sort of surfacing patterns that you can then analyze and understand if they're material or not?
I think that's part of it. One use case that I was playing with last week even was taking something I had marked up and asking for patterns in how I had marked it up that I might not be able to see myself, so that I can then show that to my team, saying, here are the kinds of things that I'm looking for when I'm looking at these kinds of documents. And it synthesized things in a way that I may not even realize I'm looking at certain things with a certain lens.
So it's almost like capture the way you analyze and the quality of your analysis, and giving that quality to the rest of your team that might not have the years of experience that you do.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like when you think about, now we're talking about technology, how do you think does, like one thing I hear a lot is like the role of technology to enable the general counsel's office and the CFO's office to have like more like a higher quality relationship and more scalable operations. Do you have any perspective on that, or have you seen any opportunities around that?
I would first say that I think the general counsel's office and the CFO's office need to have a very good relationship to begin with. So whether you have AI helping you do that or not, I think it's very important that those two functions work well together and have a very good rapport together and a lot of trust between finance and legal. There's a lot of ways that can really help the business. Finance is another business unit that does see a lot of things cross-functionally as well. So there's a lot of synergies there between how those two departments can work together. When it comes to tools, I think of tools kind of in two buckets. So the first bucket to me is the bucket that kind of unlocks capacity. So it's the bucket that's going to give you the better governance. It's going to give you better systems and processes because you have a tool that can help you do a thing. It can help knowledge and embed knowledge somewhere so that people have it, like a CLM tool, for instance, right? That's something that everybody across the business can use. It's not sitting somewhere in somebody's folder that no one can find. Really creates an institutionalized version of knowledge for everybody. And so I think those tools are just table stakes on how departments can work together effectively, is ensuring that you all have access to the same information. The second bucket of tools is where you start to really unlock some of what that knowledge can bring. So what's the data behind those tools, right? What's the data that they're capturing so that you can then be sharing in some of the insights that's coming out of it? And I think that's where there's even more opportunity for not just finance and legal, but all departments across the business to be able to understand some of those insights better and more quickly.
We've kind of developed at Athennian this concept of governance operations. So one pattern that we've seen is a desire across legal, tax, treasury, control, like the major kind of finance functions, for them to have more alignment around, what is the truth on our corporate structure, right? We all have, typically when a customer comes to us, there's often multiple spreadsheets. There's multiple truths about, what is this current state, of the corporate structure. And then there's a process of sort of, okay, let's create one truth and get everybody aligned on that. Does that, that kind of concept of governance operations, to create alignment across legal and all the finance teams around, the accurate corporate structure, to manage risk. Have you seen in your career that lack of alignment on like materializing significant risk, at certain points? Like we've seen, we have lots of crazy stories that we've collected, over the years. For example, one of them, tax dissolving an entity that was named in significant litigation. And that was fun for the legal department to have to kind of explain that to the judge and go clean that up. And it was a European entity involved in U.S. litigation, so that's a mess. I'm curious, have you ever seen, lack of alignment on the corporate structure between legal and finance or create risk in the business that's crystallized?
Yeah, I not on that level, but I've definitely seen it create a lot of confusion as well. So it can create risk, but it can also just create a lot of extra work where you maybe are saying the same thing, but saying things differently because you track your spreadsheet a certain way and we track our spreadsheet a certain way and we name an entity something or refer to it a certain way. And so it just takes a lot more time to get that alignment where everyone was kind of saying the same thing to begin with. You just didn't necessarily have that harmonized view, like you were saying, in a tool where you're just working from that central place of truth to begin with.
And so since you've implemented Athennian at Enwave, do you feel that having that tool and having that sort of harmonized view across legal and finance, has that increased trust and sort of collaboration between legal and finance?
Yeah, it's actually unlocked some opportunities for some of that tracking of information that we didn't really realize, to be honest, had overlap, where maybe there was something being tracked in a spreadsheet related to taxes that now we can bring into Athennian and try to align it directly with the entity structure and with the information around that entity, so everyone has the same visibility on timelines and clarity on where things are at. So I think it's unlocked conversations that we weren't necessarily having before, because we didn't realize there was a misalignment. And now that we have a place where things can go, we've been able to sit down and say, well, we have this tool. What would you put in here? Ideally, if you could be the one running this, what information would you want to put there? And that's generated conversations that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right. Yeah, because different departments want to be tracking different attributes on that org chart on each box to make it useful for them.
Yeah. And before we brought the tool in, we actually built a business case around it. And the business case wasn't just a legal business case. So we had some of those conversations beforehand where we brought in finance, we brought in operations, and we said, we want to bring this in. Here's where we think it can bring value to your departments as well. And we need to know that this isn't going to just be a tool that the legal department uses, but is going to be an enterprise tool that we're all using across the business.
Awesome. Well, Jessica, thanks so much for the time.
It was a good chat. Thank you.